So after Billy went clear to Kentucky and bought a completely new engine for his truck, Thursday night we took it out to make its first test hit. Even with a very soft tune-up in the truck, it made one of the fastest passes on this test road that it's ever made. But unfortunately, when we got back to the shop, the engine was making a noise. What we originally thought may be a rocker arm coming in contact with a stud girdle was far worse. So today, rather than me and Kenny Powers going to Dragway 42 to radial prep test the Malibu, we're staying home and helping Billy pull the engine apart in the S10. The engine that we just got done putting in. So far, we've only made one pass with this engine, and it's already got a major problem. And when we pulled the intake manifold off, our worst fears were realized: a broken lifter. To make matters worse, the lifter was stuck in the lifter board and wouldn't come out. So Jeremy brought his mobile toolbox down, and we dug into this thing. At first, we thought we were going to be able to get this thing out without any major surgery. But as usual, as the lifter comes to the top of the bore, it gets tight, and eventually, the lifter broke. At this point, we're still holding out hope that if we can get this lifter out, we might not have to pull the engine completely apart. So we carefully mask up the engine and use a die grinder to cut notches in the lifter body, and use the notches to dig the lifter out of the block. But unfortunately, the lifter bore is damaged and the camshaft is ruined. It absolutely has to come out of the truck. Now evidently this engine's been a problem child for a while because we found a piece of broken push rod down in the timing chain cover. And based off what I'm seeing on the rocker arms, someone's taken a die grinder to those to clearance them for the polylock. These are all signs that the push rods may not be the right length. No matter what the problem is, this engine definitely has valve train geometry problems that we need to look at very closely before we try and put it back in the truck. Another major concern that I have is that the shrapnel that we're finding in the engine oil has probably made its way onto the piston skirts and into the ring package, which will destroy the cylinder walls. And since this block is already 40 over, we can't take that risk. So when we go to pull the heads off of it, we find a few more little problems that we're concerned about as well. This engine's going to come completely apart and go straight up to Uncle Bob's, where we can closely measure all the tolerances and oil clearances before we take this thing all the way down to Texas or wherever Mega Cash Days ends up happening. Now this racing season has already been pretty rough on Billy. We've torn up more engines than we've ever torn up in a single season, and they're all up at Bob's shop. But our engines aren't the only engines up there to be fixed. There's no end to the workload for Uncle Bob. To be honest, I'm not sure why he still answers the phone when we call, because he's already swamped and doesn't need another truckload of junk brought up there to get in his way. But that's exactly what we're doing. For the second or third time in the last 2 months. First it was Billy's big block out of his Nova, and then the 18-degree small blocks, and now this. And it seems like we're always showing up right about quitting time. But Bob never complains. He goes out and gets right to work, checking everything out before we even unload it out of the truck. Since it looks to be salvageable, he tells me to go ahead and pull the truck around to the back door so we can unload everything. The first thing Bob wants to take a look at is the cylinder heads, valve springs, and valve train. He immediately starts checking valve spring pressures to see if we're floating the valves or whether the valves are going into coil bind with the amount of lift, and looking for signs of valve train geometry problems. While Bob's busy working on the cylinder heads, Billy goes ahead and brings the block in using the shop crane and sets it on a work table so Bob can take a look at this lifter bore that's all tore up and check piston to wall clearance. Bob carefully measures the bores and checks for bore taper, searching for clues as to why the piston's rocking the bore so bad. By 6:30, it was time to let Bob go home. Thank you. Sorry we're taking you from your dinner tonight.
We'll be all right.
So after we left Bob's, Billy and I stopped at a little pizza joint so that Vicky wouldn't have to cook dinner. This particular restaurant used to be a Chevrolet dealership back in the day. Today it's Elm's Pizza, and it's still owned by the same family that owned the Chevy dealership years ago. So anyway, we head home, get a bite to eat, and head to bed so we can get some rest to start all over again on Thursday. We're still trying to go racing at Milan this weekend, and I'm stressing out over trying to get this engine fixed.
Hey there, hi there, ho there, we're as grumpy as can be.
You're not grumpy.
I am.
It turns out Miss Vicky's C10 shirts came in this morning on the UPS truck.
So what do you got here now, squirrely locks?
They're here. Look at that. My truck.
How do you deal with her, Harley?
Just let her do her thing.
Vicky gets excited when her merch orders come in, but she's especially excited about her C10 shirts and hoodies. Meanwhile, I'm just praying Billy's lifters showed up from Iski.
Hey Kenny, did I get a box from Iski today? Oh.
Drum roll.
Yep. Nolan pulled it off. Those are Billy's lifters for his engine.
You were just on the phone with him
Yesterday.
at lunchtime.
Yeah.
And it's here today.
Yes.
What state does it come from?
California.
That's crazy.
You're impressed.
I am. I mean, I know when you talked to him, it was 3 hours earlier. It was still morning where he was at, but still, that's pretty impressive.
All right, so here's the deal. We're putting the engine together at Bob's and we're gonna run it in on the dyno and get it warm so that they can retorque the head gaskets before we put it back in the truck. So I need to load up everything that we need to take up there to assemble the engine.
Billy's small block uses copper head gaskets that have to be retorqued after one heat cycle, and it's much easier to do that at Bob's on the dyno than it is to put it in Billy's truck and then pull all the turbo kit back off just to retorque the heads. So I go through my gaskets and find everything we need to take up to Bob's and assemble the engine hopefully today, so that hopefully we can go ahead and take it with us to Milan this weekend. And I plan on taking the Malibu up there to run in the daily driver shootout. Now, this shootout requires a 30-mile cruise one way, and I have to be there at noon on Saturday. And since we plan on leaving Friday afternoon and staying the night, I went ahead and made Kenny a list of things that I need him to do today to help us get ready so that we can leave by about noon tomorrow. So anyway, once Kenny and I got that drum of methanol loaded up in the trailer, I had all the parts loaded up in the 64 and Kenny had plenty of work to keep him busy the rest of the day. So I head northeast up through Granville to go see Uncle Bob at the machine shop. Now, despite all the adversity and problems and stress associated with trying to get these cars ready to go racing this weekend, things could always be much worse. I mean, after all, I'm cruising up to the machine shop in a 64 C10 delivering racing engine parts. I mean, how bad could my day possibly be?
What's going on here, Junebug?
Things could definitely be worse. And we're about to get some more bad news because Bob has found a lot of problems.
All right, Uncle Bob, we're a few hours into this project. What's the report?
Well, we've got some damaged pieces.
I figured as much.
We have 2 bent intake valves, of course, 1 badly bent exhaust valve that also is going to need an exhaust guide.
It had a cracked exhaust guide in that one.
It cracked it, it bent it bad enough.
And then we've got some bearing issues in the block and the crank.
We're kind of got some mismanaged sizes. We're going to order some tomorrow and get some little extra clearance to add a little clearance to this. It's a tad tight for racing.
So we're gonna skip putting the short block together today, and that's gonna hijink our chances of going to Milan with the S10, and that's fine. I mean, it's not that important that we take the truck, but it is important that we get these main and rod bearing clearances where we need them.
It's more important that we get it right so that we at least it'll last for Mega Cash to hit.
Right, we just need this
last
thing,
race.
like we're gonna try and take this thing to Texas.
And we want to make sure it
We
makes
don't
it
know
to
where
Texas.
it's at.
Well, wherever. Well, I mean, you're right. We don't know where it's at yet, but wherever the hell this Mega Cash Days is, it's not going to be in our backyard. I guarantee you that. So,
And we're going to make some adjustments on spring pressures like we do the rest of your trucks.
Yep.
So
yeah.
try to put all these pieces back together and make it work.
So you've marked the clearances with a standard bearing. Is that what this is?
That is correct.
So these are our oil clearances with a standard bearing: 2.3, 27, 27, 22,
This
22.
one's actually a little bit bigger because the crank
Is
Yes.
it-
different.
Okay. So too tight, still a little too tight, still a little too tight, and this one would pass at 3.3.
Yeah.
Correct.
So we're going to have to do some finagling with bearings to make all our oil clearances come out, because we want a heavy film of oil to float that crankshaft in on making as much power as this does. I mean, if this was a stock engine, this would
Absolutely,
probably,
perfect.
this would be fine. I mean, we could
fine.
get by with that, sticking it in the old 64 C10.
Absolutely.
But we can't get by with that trying to make 1,500 horsepower and turning this thing 8,200 RPM.
I correct.
That's not going to happen. So it's going to keep us from putting this thing together today, but that's okay. You got bearings coming.
Yes.
We know where we're at. Now, yeah, we've got valves coming, a valve guide, because it cracked that one exhaust guide. So one other concern that we had, Bob, was the looseness of the piston rocking in the bore. And unfortunately, right now, we're not able to cure that problem because we don't have time to order custom pistons. And this block is already 40 over. So we're running out of lifespan on the bores as it is. It's 4165 right now.
Right.
And at 4165, some of these are 3 and 4 thousandths too loose.
That is correct. So we can put this thing together and we can run it for a little while, but knowing that we need to get it back
Yeah.
and fix the piston problem, and we should be good.
So since we know that this block is already right, and
Right.
then some of these, it's got I think 1 or 2 sleeves in it already.
Yeah.
So since this block is already almost at its end of the line, 4165 bore, instead of taking it 60 over, because that's going to affect the fitment of the O-ring also in the head gasket. So what you're talking about doing is custom ordering a set of oversized 40 over pistons
Yes.
so that we can square the block up at like, say what, 4170. So if we could square the bores up at 4170 and order a custom set of 40 over pistons.
So we can hone it and square it up
Yeah.
and get one last good run out of it.
Yeah.
And it'd be great for a backup motor
Right,
to the other one.
right.
And we might want to go ahead at that time and, you know, there are other possibilities is you want to go ahead and switch it over to the 18 degree and put 18 degree pistons in it for the backup.
I would say probably leave this one 23 degree, to be honest with you, because I'd hate to put 18 degree pistons in a block. It's almost at its lifespan. You know, it's almost over. Now, I mean, this thing could be put in my Malibu.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, that's
Since we finished up early at the machine shop today, I figured on my way home I'd stop by the farm and check in on Uncle Bucko, who has been working on the combine trying to get it ready to run beans this fall. They're just about ready to run and Mom and Dad's having a fit.
are you making any damn progress up here?
well, yeah.
I don't see much.
Really? Look at that masterpiece there. It's a 4-foot long shaft, and I welded it in place with a 5 thousandths clearance. Don't believe me?
This old Alice Chalmers Gleaner K combine is a teetotal disaster, and this one bushing out of the side has been tore up for a long time and it's caused a bunch of damage to the left-hand side of the head. Now that Jeremy's got this thing fixed, he's just about ready to put it back together once he gets some of these sheet metal pieces hand fabricated and welded in place. Now obviously this is a long, tedious, drawn-out process, but sometimes you really have to lean on Jeremy to keep him going.
Well, I hope this project goes faster than my dump truck.
You know what they say, the squeakiest wheel always gets the most grease.
Your dump truck would be done already if you'd stop blowing shit up.
It looks like I need to send Kenny Powers up here to help you out.
What, to slow me down?
No, look at this freaking disastrous mess.
Yeah, you keep Kenny out of there. I know where everything's at.
Nobody else does.
That's good.
Alright, so I guess maybe I've stirred Jeremy up enough for the day. So I head back to the house to check in on Miss Vicky and see what she's planning on doing for dinner tonight. Alright guys, welcome back. So Vicky and I went out to dinner tonight. Well, first we stopped down to Billy's shop and saw Robbie and Billy. They were down there working on Rob's Mustang. And they've made a considerable amount of progress on that Mustang. Robbie's cut the whole front end of it off, put a tube front end in it. He's got his LS engine sitting down in it. He's now fabbing up the hot side, and Billy's starting to weld it. So it's looking pretty good. After we got done visiting those guys down at the shop, we all went down to Texas Roadhouse for dinner. Got a little something to eat, and now I'm back here at the shop trying to get ready to go to Milan tomorrow with the Malibu. Before I can leave though, I've got a whole pile of nitrous bottles in here I need to fill. And I got some things to talk about with Nitrous Express. Now, as you guys know, they've sponsored Street Racing Channel and Old Man's Garage, and I'm taking the Malibu to PRI. It's going to be in the Nitrous Express booth. And they've also stepped up to do a giveaway with us this month. Nitrous Express has already shipped me a perimeter plate system to give away this month. However, it's a 4150 flange, and that may not be what you need. It may not. If it's not what you need, Nitrous Express is on board to ship you whatever kit you want. Maybe you need a 4500 flange. Maybe you've got a Mustang, a fuel-injected Mustang, maybe a Coyote Mustang, or maybe a Dodge Charger, or any one of the LS engines out there running the streets that could use a nitrous kit. God knows they need it. Whatever you decide that you would like to have for a nitrous kit, if you can't use the perimeter 4150 plate that they've already shipped, then they will send you whatever kit that you would like. Now, if it's a fogger and it requires installation, the installation is going to cost you, $400 to $600 for a fogger kit install. But other than that, if it's a bolt-on kit, they're going to ship it directly to your door. Okay? So, how do you win? Everybody that purchases merchandise this month, October, from oldmansgarage.shop, our website, every single purchase you make enters you for a chance to win a brand new Nitrous Express nitrous kit. If you don't feel like you're lucky enough to win something, or if you're in a hurry and you need something, go to nitrousexpress.com and use SRC or OMG as a promo code. Either one will get you 10% off your order, and it lets them know that you're shopping with them to support Street Racing Channel and Old Man's Garage. So in other news, we're headed to Milan, Michigan this weekend for the Detroit Hood TV Pour Your Own Puddle event. It's a backwards race at the end of Milan Dragway, and I'm going to be racing the Malibu in the Daily Driver Shootout. The Daily Driver Shootout is for daily driver cars, which, as we all know, there's going to be a whole bunch of slow race cars trying to identify as a daily driver. That happens every time. But regardless, I'm going to go up there and support it because I fully believe in the daily driver shootouts and the streetcar shootouts. I think it's one of the next big things that's about to explode in the no prep scene. So I'm taking the Malibu up there. Billy's going to take the Mustang. Tommy's going to be racing the Falcon. Unfortunately, as you saw earlier in the video, the S10's not going to make it. But we're all going to be there. I think Vicky's taking some merch and Allison's taking some merch. So we'll be up there. We'll be set up. And we hope to see everybody at Milan Dragway. We'll see you all this weekend. Good night, guys. Hey, those beans are looking like they're just about ready to run, so I don't know what you're doing, but you better get this done.
I got about 3 days, maybe.
Well, then, you got 3 days.
I know. Try not to break anything.